The kids today are invisible online, or they use an anonymity. That is not nefarious. That is because they have been posted their entire life. They want privacy. But we also have to teach our kids, if they would like to be drafted by that team, or like to go to that university, or like that job, or play the guitar and would like more streams or opportunities to make money on these incredible channels that offer entrepreneurship remarkable, that they do have to broadcast themselves. We have to teach our kids personal branding now.
Welcome everyone. On today's episode, we have in studio a guest, somebody I've known for years, Joe from Joe Social Media. I've worked with him because in my videography career, dance recitals and things. He's a well-known personality within the Central Alberta community. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you. It's great to be here and nice to work with you always in those settings, but in this one, which is a really important topic that's close to my heart.
Yeah. Okay. So you're the CEO of Joe Social Media. So let's just talk about that because really what we wanted to kind of create is a discussion based on social media, and you are an expert on that topic.
Yeah, there's definitely I'm completely conscious or cognizant at this part of history that social media has a lot of experts. And a lot of those experts don't have any expert training. They're just simply social media experts. And so I like to think that I'm one step further from that, although not maybe that far. I've owned a social media agency since before Instagram or Snapchat existed. Really started early in the psychological behaviors of online advertising. So while my business is an agency that helps businesses grow their brand on just another channel like radio, television, newspaper, or transit advertising, social media is a great advertising channel. So that's what my business does. But in doing this so long and with so many different age categories and groups, I started to learn really quickly that whether it was seniors, or what we're going to talk about today, parents and kids, teachers and educators, without an understanding that we weren't there, how is it possible that any of us can relevantly teach our kids how to be there? And that is one of the fundamental problems we're having as a society. The very people who are charged with keeping kids safe online have zero relevance to being safe online because it didn't exist when they were the same age.
Yeah, and I think that obviously the challenge there is, the older generation sometimes doesn't feel like they have as good of a grasp on technology as the younger generation, and so we're kind of in this discomfort area talking to our kids about it because it feels like, oh well, sometimes they're in a different playing field than we are a little bit.
Yeah, discomfort's a really great word. I'm glad you used it. We are extremely uncomfortable, but there's a couple of reasons for that I want to calm the audience down a little bit in. Remember that your grandparents were really uncomfortable when marketing or advertising went boom and it was in every place. Remember that they grew up with way less channels on their television, for example. And then when cable went boom and you could have a BMX bike channel and a horse channel and a home and garden channel, that we started to see advertisers pitch their message in different consumer areas. So we were uncomfortable. And then your parents were uncomfortable when they saw mass media or new places. We watched the VHS and the VCR turn to DVD and digital discs and other things that came and went. And then we could, rather than holding pure these CDs or cassettes, if you're from my era, and and you could have your music, well, we had to stream it. And when you could stream it, then advertisers could infiltrate that stream. So uncomfortable has always been around. The more things change, the more they actually stay the same. Here's why we're all uncomfortable right now. We're in charge. No one signed up for this part, by the way. All of us would rather be a child. Well, maybe not all of us. There's past traumas and others where people are glad they're an adult. And it's certainly nice to have some freedoms, although we could all do without the heating bill. And so we're all uncomfortable because we're now in charge. We're doing what our parents had to do, which was control what we were seeing or consuming. We had to decide, as children, I don't know if you're like me, but maybe you wanted the sugar cereal, but mom or dad said you can't have the sugar cereal. Parents were in control to a degree until we went for a sleepover and our best friend had a sugar cereal. And then our moms and dads had to come up with the exact same excuse that we're having to do with social media, why you can't have Snapchat but your friends do. We had to have those same conversations with our parents. It was over these sometimes innocuous things like which sugar cereal, but there were also some of those leaking consumer medias coming in where we had to have those decisions too, which we'll chat about. So we're all very uncomfortable. It's a great word, but uncomfortable, in my opinion and in my experience, has been what has helped me age and mature, always because I had loving parents, grandparents, and other generations, and teachers, coaches in sport and other things, by the way, outside sources of mentors, leaders who have made me the man I am today, which allows me to help kids, adults, teachers, educators, and professionals.
So I guess that's the golden question is like, how do we as parents encourage our children as they're, growing to become responsible online citizens? Like in this world, right? When sometimes we're challenged in being that as well in ourselves.
Oh,
right?
I love that you said that. That's what I was going to follow up with. We are challenged. I mean, I have yet to meet a child anywhere who enters the comment section to hate. Kids use social media devices in direct messaging or in texting. They've actually disappeared from public channels on purpose because guess who publicized every part of their life growing up? We did. And that's why channels like Snapchat, Instagram, direct messaging, text messaging, behind the scenes messaging is more favored by young people. And it's because adults are the ones that hate in the comments section. Adults are the ones that denounce publicly these same channels they're using. They're somehow terrible for our kids to use. And they are. Don't get me wrong. I'm not at all defending many of the content creators on the channels, not the channels, although the channels have a responsibility in the algorithm and other things. We could get deep into that. The content creators on the channels are the ones that are exposing our kids to the things that many of us don't want them to see. And so the answer to your question of how do we help our kids understand digital citizenship, we're doing that, but it's nothing to do with digital. This has always been taught. The more things change, the more they stay the same. You'll hear me say that a lot. My grandparents taught me my grandpa taught me how to shake a hand. Not even my dad. He didn't even have time. It was my grandpa. I don't know how young I was, but certainly quite young. He taught me exactly all of those things that maybe some of your audience knows, which is, squeeze appropriately, but not too hard. You look someone in the eye. Your name is your true value. All of these sort of old school values. That's teaching digital citizenship. Saying please and thank you. At a holiday or a summertime barbecue, a lunch, saying thank you to the people who gave you or cooked your meal. These are, we don't call them digital citizenship. This is citizenship. We just happen to exist now in a different realm or world, or many of our kids will, even if you try to keep them away from it a long time. We have to teach kids no different than we were taught. The only difference is they have to be conscious that what they write, what they do, doesn't dissipate into the air when we say please and thank you. It exists, and quite possibly forever.
So that's fascinating. That like I really appreciate it because I've always wondered like, okay, why do my kids not want to be on Facebook? Why do they, why are they choosing these other platforms? And like you said, it's because of the reception that they have, or it's where their friends are. Like, but we may not be, right? So, but like that's.
We're not our children never had privacy. So they're not afraid to lose it. We grew up with privacy. The only way you knew where your friends were is when their bikes were parked out front of your friends, right? Mom and dad sometimes, in many cases, toured the neighborhood to find out where you were.
Right.
Our children, unfortunately, but definitely provable, were posted by us. We were handed these social media platforms, many of us, at an age where we weren't given proper training. None of us, other than you and me, Drew, have media training, right? And so media training taught us that we have to act differently. The goalposts are different online. I'm fortunate for that training. Jen, you and I were talking about how my mom was a kindergarten teacher. I learned quite early in my career I couldn't be a bad kid. I wasn't going to be, very likely, given the loving relationship that the generations handed me.
Yeah.
But I knew if I was, those are my mom's colleagues in grade school, middle school, high school. My name was her name, and therefore I had to act, and I'm glad I did, but I didn't know at the time. So our kids and many adults in this world don't have that same understanding. They just comment, spout off on the internet. And it's funny, it's like driving. Everyone out there is a bad driver except us, right? And so many people look at the internet, oh my gosh, the comment section is horrible people doing horrible things. I would never do that. Well, if no one's doing the horrible things, why do I continue daily to see horrible things online? And the answer is there's burner accounts. There's people who have anonymity, which is a real dangerous factor to social media. We have to talk to our kids about anonymity and why it can benefit, but it can also be an exceptional detriment when we're talking about things like personal branding, growing opportunity, getting scouted, or going to that technical or college or university trade school. Anonymity does not help you if the talents you have are broadcastable and consumable. You can gain way more in this life from good social media and digital citizenship than you will lose from bad.
Right.
So we have to teach our kids that, but we can't teach it. Nobody of our age or generation had it.
No idea about it.
And worse, Jen, we're teaching people, our kids, that social media channels are bad. We're so terrified of the channels. And again, I won't condone much of the consumer or content creator things we see. But I will tell you there's some incredible things online and happening online. We know that because we as adults share it. Hey, did you see this TikTok? See this cool thing? Hey, my grandpa's a welder. He just made this amazing fire pit for our backyard. Good things can be purveyed by these social media broadcast channels, no different than television, radio, and this very program. We can help people learn the good while still helping them understand the bad. And we're not doing that. We're concentrating on the bad only and not concentrating on any opportunity for good.
So we've kind of talked about connection. How important do you think it is connecting to your kids and establishing that relationship so that they can make good decisions online? Because we, like you said, we can't control the negative. The negative will always be there. So how important do you think the connection is with our children?
Love that. I love connection. And again, this comes from a place of privilege. I understand many in the listening or viewing audience don't have that same version, or they have a broken version of it. We have to recognize, and I have a lot of empathy for those that might not have gotten here the same way I did. I have a loving family relationship. I was raised to love myself and others and give and mind my P's and Q's, and taught all of what I think are really good lessons, which allows me to give these lessons to others. Mm-hmm. The connection part is essential. We do have to recognize in specific parts of the country, it's a little bit different, but overall, in general, that connection has been lost in many family relationships. We have to recognize that a lot of kids have 4 parents, not 2. We have to know that there are exponential versions of a broken family. That doesn't have to mean broken. They can be loved, broken in the sense of they are broken from the traditional family. Mm-hmm. And so those connection pieces are so vital because there may be a really strong connection with a male or a female, mom or a dad or a step parent, and then not so much of one or zero on another. And so that connection is really, really difficult to quantify. Essential and important. Ultimately, all of us want a couple of things. We want to feel valued. Child does, and an adult does, by the way. Everyone wants to feel valued. So does that clerk at the retail store. They want to feel valued too. And so teaching that to value other people will also help you understand how you want to be valued. And then in connection, we all want to feel as though someone cares about us, the value. We want to feel loved. Children certainly will never tell you this. They just assume it. That's another component of this that's really difficult. I think a lot of times parents, adults, certainly practitioners who are adults in leadership positions, we sometimes teach or help kids through difficult times from an adult perspective. And so even when we're teaching connection, we might get a teenage boy or girl going, I don't want to be loved. Don't hug me.
That happens
they don't,
all the time.
Yeah, exactly. It happens all the time. And so we have to understand. So sometimes our human reaction to that is what we've learned as we mature as adults. They don't love me. No, they do. That's a child reaction. You probably did it too, right? There's a whole bunch of science on how kids, specifically just pre-puberty and post-puberty, don't like to be touched physically because their body's changing and other things. So, but what we do sometimes, knee-jerk, which we can talk lots about in social media, parenting, knee-jerk reactions, which can be detrimental. Knee-jerking to thinking a child moving away from a hug is them not loving you, and then the subsequent reaction. So connection is in the empathetic response. So sometimes we want to love someone a certain way, but that isn't received in the same way. And then they want to love us a different way, all relationships. And we don't get the same reciprocal. So it's also in an empathy of understanding the love between a mom, a dad, a step parent, a child, a boy, a girl. There's so many variations of this. And so it's really just a one-off connection study that we all have to get through safely and hopefully without tearing each other's heads off.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and previous to this, we were kind of having a discussion. I overheard you guys, as parents, like sometimes we think about, oh, well, you need to do this, and like really kind of like specifically, or like trying to like handle them or guide them through this digital journey. There's other things that we can do just in being parents and good parenting, right?
We've always had to have role models. We might not even realize it until you snap in and go, oh, you know what? My sense of humor is actually my science teacher's sense of humor in grade 8. Boy, I really liked that guy. My science teacher was funny, and I didn't even realize it until this moment that I use his sense of humor. I connected with it, right? And so that's just one of many examples. Obviously, parenting 24/7 in the early years, and then eventually they try to escape. Mentorship, there's some really great poetry, songs, and readings on what kids see and what we think they see, right? You might experience road rage driving a vehicle. Our kids might develop their version of dealing with anger situations because of how they grew up watching you drive. You might think, and to your point, that you've taught them at the kitchen table in lessons, in proper, a time that you thought you were teaching, but they'd already learned that behavior because dad drives and he raises his fist and maybe some fingers at some other people, right? And so learned behavior in the way that we mentor, you always have to be on. And so even in those demonstrative times, when you're enjoying adult time or a drink after supper, your kids are watching their alcohol consumption, their perception of sexuality, their perception of language use, the way you might talk to your mother on the phone. Maybe you're perturbed by something mom did because that's your relationship with your mom, but they're learning how to speak to mom. It's quite literally always being on. And so the reason that's important in our conversation and what we were talking about earlier is how our social media component, we let our guard down quite often. We might be talking to that local restaurant or that local retailer or a friend or an acquaintance or a perfect stranger online. Your kids are watching you. And if they're not watching you, because many in your audience won't actually be broadcasters, the vast majority of social media users are scrollers, they're consumers. Very few of us actually broadcast a message, also a problem we have in our society. In my opinion. No different than the television, by the way. The more things change, the more they stay the same. There are only this many television stations, and there are this many people on the planet. There are only this many radio stations and this many people on the planet. We are getting all of our information and our leadership and our learning and these demonstrative lessons from a very small sector of broadcasters. So parents need to become broadcasters, not just online, not to be consumed by a large mass of followers or to get likes, but we need to let our kids know that we and our morals and values are important, if not the most important, and that you will see all of these others, but it's our lessons or this in our family, because we have to teach our kids, in my opinion, that when they go out and they will see the opposite or versions of that don't match moral values, we have to teach them that they're safe to see that, they're safe to consume it in some cases, but that our voice is in their head and that the way we do things is related to what happens within our four walls.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that, teaching them the values and also teaching them, having the conversation that if they do see something, okay, like that's not according to our morals. It's not bad that they saw it. They shouldn't feel shame about it. They can turn it off, but feel comfortable enough to talk about it and come to us. I think that connection is a really, really important thing to have with our children.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and that is, I've been speaking in schools for almost a decade now, all over the province of Alberta, high school, middle school, even elementary kids as young as grade 3. This lesson is being taught, but it's being taught, unfortunately, in a sort of by people who don't have the authority to teach it. They're trying to help kids, and that's wonderful. Digital citizenship and online education has been a part of curriculum for a very long time, and that's a good thing. However, it doesn't necessarily, the textbook was written by people that didn't have the same, there isn't an adult watching this program that had Snapchat at 8 years old. It's impossible. It didn't exist. So we're teaching safety on Snapchat without the understanding or social behaviors and
or
other
the
things.
Experience.
Yeah. No experience, but we're teaching them safety. And when we teach safety first, then we often get the message wrong. Everything's dangerous, right? We don't ever teach a child that a car can drive them to Disneyland. We teach them that it can run them over, kill them, and that the fumes are dangerous, right? And we could come up with 1,000 appliances in the home that aren't made to have share family time with grandma. They're made to kill you or cut your hand off or what have you. So we get really dangerous with our teachings. But I think the point you made, which is such an important one, is on the connection component. If we aren't willing to see this from their side, and in many ways let our guard down to accept that we would have probably done the same thing, if we go back to our adolescent brain, our pre-adolescent brain, and realize that we liked validation from our friends, or we wanted to know we were pretty or handsome or were good at sports. We wanted others to, in many cases, some people didn't crave that validation, but some people did. And I really want to stress that if we don't come at this from an empathetic component to the age they are, or not the age, that's just a number, the maturity level they are. A 12-year-old boy is different than a 12-year-old boy, is different than a 12-year-old girl, is different than a 12-year-old girl. They're all different based on raisings and other things that have happened in their life. So don't come at it from age, but come at it from a maturity level, and then have those conversations, to your point, when they see content. When you see content, we've all sat awkwardly in a kissing scene of a movie or worse with our moms or our dads and had that awkward, I don't want to watch this with you. But this is where we have to, whether it's TikTok or an Insta Reel or something that's happening in your timeline, it really is important to help kids unpack what they're feeling. Almost all parents I speak to around the province are unwilling, not because they're bad parents. They're unwilling because awkward conversations about cannabis, alcohol, sex, social media, something you saw on TikTok, they're just awkward, and it's quite easier not to do it. And so they're not, I do it too, we aren't bad parents, but we have to help our kids unpack what they saw. That means asking them questions, asking them why, asking them about what they saw and how it made them feel. And you might be amazed that you'll get an honest response, because kids are taught in these programs in school to be open and honest about their mental health.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really important because there's a lot of opportunity for shaming, like internally for them. Like if they accidentally saw something and they don't want to talk about it, then the vicious cycle happens, and then their mental health, and then I'm a horrible person, or things like that can come
Or they feel like if they talk to an adult about it, that on top of it,
What will
they're
they
going to
think?
be like
Right.
punished or shamed, or like then it's just going to add on to it. And it's like the thing that I think we need to instill is that, okay, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, we're all going to mess up or fall, or we're going to stumble upon something that's not our fault. And so we just have to navigate through that, and having that open door where the kids can like come to us and say, hey, this is, I'm not feeling good about what I saw, or this is like, like it's hard. Like I can't say that that's been an experience necessarily with all my kids, but like I would hope that they would feel that way.
We have a lot of hope as parents, don't we? We hope they're thinking what we would want them to think. We hope that they've learned the lessons grandma or mom taught them. We hope they say please and thank you. I love that, and we will continue to hope. We will hope that they find the right boy or girl to marry, and that we hope they find a good job that makes them happy. And we hope. Hope is a great word, and I don't say it lightly. But remember that a lot of what we instill in our kids, we don't need the hope. If you are raising them not just with lessons taught vocally and verbally, but in demonstrative ways, if they see loving parents, if they see good behaviors, if they watch dad treat the server with respect and kindness, then that hope should be wiped away, because they should and will too. And then they'll teach their friends as well. I think it's really important to help the audience understand that it's been quite alarming in the schools that I've had an opportunity to visit. Almost no adolescent child, grade 11, 12, college, university, first years, who were the advent of social media. They were the first kids online. Almost none of them are willing to bring an issue that they find online, negative behavior online, something that impacts their negative health. Almost none of them will visit an adult about that. Not just in the same teenage ways of, oh, they'll never understand, which is a part of growing up. Mom will never understand this. But also in an alarming sense. We hear lots about photos that are shared inappropriately behind the scenes in direct messages and other things. Kids don't bring that to mom and dad. And you need to know why. It's because we roll our eyes. We ban them, we forbid them, and then when something goes wrong, we can't allow them to unpack it, because we'll just judge them for it. In fact, in many cases, we find parents and teachers punish them. You weren't supposed to be there in the first place. I just told you that I'm in danger of a luring incident. Some creep from the States wants me to meet him at a gas station, whatever the horrible scenario might be. And you're worried that I was on Snapchat. We have the wrong learning as adults, in my opinion, on how to solve kids' problems online. And that is, we want to ban it, we want to forbid it, we want to make it go away in many cases. There are people watching, listening to this right now who wish it didn't exist. You talk hope, I talk wish. You cannot wish this away. And hypocritically, you can't use it, Wi-Fi, resources, iPads, technology, while also wishing it to go away. And so instead, we simply have to teach it. Not one child learns to drive a car by getting in it in the middle of the night and hitting the highway. We put them through proper lessons, structure, we demonstrate. There's not a dad or a mom amongst us who has taught a kid to drive who hasn't held on for dear life or made the joke of, get off the sidewalks, my kid now has her license, or whatever it might be. And so this is the same thing, except there's no driving academy. You're the driving academy. But you weren't on Snapchat. So how can you teach driving if you never learned to drive? And that is where we're going here. And I don't have an answer. It's a rhetorical question. The answer is you have to learn from them, allow them to be the teacher. That can be very hard. This is the first time in history that a parent has had to go, teach me what you're doing there on Snapchat. By the way, you will always have the psychological upper hand on your children, right? So you can ask that quite literally to learn how Snapchat works, or you can psychologically be one step up on them and watch how they navigate it. You'll learn a lot about what they're doing online. You don't need to know how to post a selfie or make your face, turn funny with some antlers on, a neat little filter. They can show you that. And if your child is showing you that, you might learn, oh, They're interested in the creative side of Snapchat.
So do you think it's important for us to educate ourselves about the different platforms so we kind of know what our children are doing?
Yeah, you'll never keep up. So ultimately, no. Yes, you should have a relative awareness. You know, we've all heard the joke of grandpa picks up the smartphone upside down. No, you shouldn't. You should have a relative awareness of how these things work, but you'll never keep up. If your goal is to learn Snapchat to spy on your kids, that's the wrong goal. Learning Snapchat from a 12-year-old will show you their psychological use. Learning, by the way, this goes both ways. If you're a mom or a dad on Instagram, show them how you use it. Because that's the other part of social media conversation we never have. It's really funny how we just assume, it's very selfish of adults, by the way, to assume that kids are using social media the way we do. I know it sounds weird to say that a new digital technology is already vastly advanced, but the first iterations of Facebook pages where we wrote on someone's wall, that's OG now, that's old school. That's not how we necessarily use these channels, except the old people do. We still comment on our aunt's, dog pictures. That's how we learn to use social media. Remember that kids didn't learn social media in that way. That's also one of the reasons we're so scared of this. We don't Snapchat. Many adults do now, but we, for the most part, we don't Snapchat. We don't use it that way. If I want to talk to my friend, I'm going to phone them.
That's how I'm used to it.
Yeah, although many of us picked up on texting no problem. Talk to an adult of any age, 40 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus, grandparents, even older, texting no problem. For whatever reason, we found that safe. By the way, that's the first iteration of social media. Why are we somehow okay, but hypocritically not okay with their version of texting, which is Snapchat? They take a picture of their ear or their big toe or the floor or the dog's tail, blurry, or dad sleeping on the couch when they shouldn't. They write words on it. That is a text for a teenager. We just don't accept it because that's not a text for us. Why can't they have texting in a new way? They have music in a new way. We had cassettes, they can stream it. We somehow hypocritically, in my opinion, hypocritically in many cases, don't accept their new versions of the way to do basic communications. Mm-hmm. They don't write on walls. They don't post to Instagram. Most kids have not been taught to post. And again, we've already talked about it. They have been posted their entire lives. They're not in it for the validation and the outgoing. They want internal. So, by the way, you have to help your kids understand that still the people hiring, which are old people, are watching online brands. So we actually deal with this quite often. The kids today are invisible online, or they use an anonymity. That is not nefarious. That is because they have been posted their entire life. They want privacy. But we also have to teach our kids, if they would like to be drafted by that team, or like to go to that university, or like that job, or play the guitar and would like more streams or opportunities to make money on these incredible channels that offer entrepreneurship remarkable, that they do have to broadcast themselves. We have to teach our kids personal branding now. And so these are elements in the lessons that are often overlooked because we're so concentrating on them hearing a bad word or seeing nudity, which we need to be. And our parents were worried about that too, just on very different technologies.
What's the appropriate age to give a kid a phone? And I know we've talked about all this stuff, and I can kind of get from you that there's parents out there that say, I'm never giving my kid a phone. And I think you're in I'm assuming that you're in the categories that's, no, they should have a phone at some point. But so what is the age? And is there
Yeah, I mean, if it were up to most parents in your viewing and listening audience, they'd never want their children to drive, never drink, never...
Bubble wrap.
Yeah, bubble wrap your child. Wear a helmet everywhere you go. Digital communication, learning how to type is something we did in high school on typewriters, and then it turned into computers. And then digital communication, frankly, if you don't have the ability to keyboard, I'm speaking from my perspective, it was a detriment. It became quite literally a part of the resume. And so I'm not saying that they're going to need to be able to make an Instagram reel or a TikTok, but we are watching simple technologies like simple editing, downloading, let's just call it the ability to navigate the internet and social behaviors. We are watching employers and people of the places your kids will work, whether entrepreneurship or otherwise, they are favoring those with technologies that best represent their business. We live in a consumer world. The employer would much rather have someone on staff who positively represents their brand publicly than someone invisible. That does not mean that everyone watching this needs to rush their kids into some broadcastability and make, little Jean-Benet Ramseys of the world. We don't need people to be broadcasted brands. However, I am telling you, a lot of employers would rather know up front that they're going to have a responsible social media or social element to their outgoing brand. Certainly in sales and anything commission roles, outgoing jobs, there are plenty of job roles that are behind the scenes, but even those technologies are valuable. We're watching video game players operate large cranes in major areas because a lot of the digital components are similar. And the dexterity, not necessarily the same, it's a false equivalency on what you do in the crane, but the dexterity of button pushing and multitasking is a part of social behavior. So, long answer to a simple question. What age should your kid have a cell phone? It's the exact same question we asked our kids, or we were asked of ourselves, our grandparents were asked, our parents were asked of, when should my child be able to wear makeup? Or when should my child be able to date? Or when should my child be able to have a sleepover? There's so many of those questions that have been asked over the years, and as I continue to say, this is just another iteration of that. By the way, age is a number. There isn't a child alive today who has special needs or on the spectrum that should be considered the same numerical age. If you've got a special needs child or someone with Down syndrome or someone of disability, I mean, we just know they aren't the same age by number. So that's why, able-bodied, able-minded, or otherwise, we have to have less age and more maturity conversations.
So it's more about the connection with your child and understanding what they're mature enough for or capable.
Yeah, and again, it's so fascinating to me, the equivalencies to chocolate, to an entire birthday cake, to trusting them after school with things that they may be able to handle and things maybe they shouldn't be in their periphery or even locked up. Right. There is an age in which your child can be trusted to be around dangerous weapons or money or given a PIN number and a debit card. There are ages when you shouldn't, and only a parent or a step-parent or a grandparent or a loving teacher or coach can know that, and it's not an age. Your child should have a monetary allowance, but it's probably not cash anymore. Mm-hmm. I grew up in an age of cash. My dad sewed money into the tags of my shirts so that no one would pickpocket me and so that I could go out, because I spent summers teaching kids at hockey school. I needed cash and I needed it in a dangerous place. And it might look like I was grasping my jacket carefully in all the places I went. That's because there was cash in it. That was my danger. Now we have debit cards and the ability, but now you have to have that conversation. So again, you'll notice I'm not talking social media, but we can make the equivalencies. So what age is your child okay to have a debit card, a responsible debit card, not to tap it everywhere and buy candy, but to have responsible debit use? And you will know that based on a maturity level. You should have questions and comments. What are you spending on? Spending allowance. And again, I know it's a social media question, but the exact same thing. The answer to the question of when is why. Because you will learn immediately by asking the simple 3-lettered word why question of almost anything they desire. They don't want you to ask why. You will find out immediately why a child wants to watch an R-rated movie or be on Snapchat or have the ability to text a friend. And kids are very see-through, and this is the upper hand that parents, we can be all non-techie we want, but we have the upper hand in psychological behavior. We should, and if we love our kids, it's for the right reasons, not nefarious, not to trick them, not to spy on them. That's horrible. We didn't want to be spied on either. The problem is this diary, this journal of social media exists, and we're trying to protect them by spying on them. But spying on them is not the answer. Banning them and forbidding them is not the answer. Learning why is the answer. Again, you might find your child wants to communicate with someone. You might be surprised to learn that many kids like to communicate, or the ability to communicate, or want a phone for the first time because they're worried about their friend who doesn't have a dad. They're actually worried and want to be the right-hand person for that person who doesn't have a person. You might learn, as I have, that your kids are actually way more loving than nefarious. We have learned that kids stay up at night on their devices while you walk by their door and see a glow from under the covers. You think they're doing nefarious, silly, terrible things. But I have learned, and I'm very proud to report, that a lot of kids have the right intentions, but God forbid they'd come to you and say, I need a phone because my best friend is in danger most nights and I help talk her to sleep. And that is also happening, and you have to allow room for that empathy.
Mm-hmm. I've actually had similar a little bit with my own daughter on
Good kid.
where her intentions were, and it surprised me actually.
Precisely.
Yeah. So
Love that for you, by the way.
Well,
Love that
thank
for
you. Yeah, it really surprised me.
Love that for you.
Yeah.
By the way, this is, I'm glad you touched on it, and I don't mean to bring it back or use hyperbole on it, but this is, in my experience, this is a very large sect of the teenage world. We immediately, even the word, see how when you think teenager, and your audience just heard me say the word, see what your brain does with that word? Many in the audience will have gone to a teenagers. It's been almost branded in a negative way. Teenage, we were them. There's angst, there's negativity, right? Branding and consumerism is a huge part of that. So when we think teenager, and now I add social media, we go to a nefarious, dark place instantly, right? Mm-hmm. We have to relearn this. We have to start giving our kids, not others, protect yourself from others, right? Mm-hmm. No different than teaching someone to drive. There are bad drivers, there are drunk drivers, there are unfortunately bad things that can happen. But if you've done your job, and that's on you, by the way, you can't blame society, culture, or consumerism. If you've done your job, they've been raised as best you can in a loving relationship with trust, morals, and values handed down from generations, an oral history. Values are so important. If you've instilled them appropriately, then you have to flip the way you think they are acting online. And they will and can get into trouble. But most importantly, they have to be able to know, not be able to do, be able to know that at any point they can come to you and you will not judge, you won't roll your eyes, and you won't give them crap immediately. That doesn't mean you can't give them crap. Doesn't mean they don't have punishments. It doesn't mean there aren't consequences to choices. I hope in a perfect world they come to you with those too. I've actually witnessed parents tell me, or teachers, kids that come to them and say, I did what I wasn't supposed to do. I should have this taken away. I should have this punishment that we agreed on. I don't deserve this right now. I'm not responsible enough. Mind-blowing to hear that. But good kids understand when they make missteps, and they just need some guidance and help, in my opinion, and in my experience. And I've been really grateful to be a part of those conversations. There's a lot of good kids on this planet. There's some bad adults, and there's never any bad kids. Bad adults make bad kids, and I don't like to say that, and I want to think that everyone, but we do have to protect ourselves from the learnings of others, but not to a detriment or a blockage that we don't know it exists. Let's teach kids that it exists, because if you don't know the opposite, you can't do the opposite. Yeah,
I love that. And back to the word hope. I feel like for me, just in the experiences I've had with my own kids and with, like the kids that I've interacted with, at schools or at church, I'm really actually impressed with the up and coming generation. I feel like they've got, like a lot going for them with this new technology, and just like, and not only that, but I think with, I think they can have, more anxiety sometimes, but I think overall they've got the hope. And sometimes I look at what they do, and I'm like, holy cow, like I would have loved to have this type of technology to do. I had to edit like stop and start off of VHS to VHS, and making my own home movies and stuff like that. The world is just unlimited for them, where they can do so much more. And so I think there's, again, back to the good, better, best, it's just encouraging them to kind of level up. And I think they're there. I think they're ready. Yeah. And it's just that us as adults just need to be encouraging.
You're just speaking my language. You said about that's exactly it. Like, hard stop, we're done. That's exactly what we need to do, but we're not doing it because of fear, right? There's not an adult alive who's in charge of a child and loves a child that wouldn't at some point introduce paints, crayons, blank pieces of paper, blank canvases to create. For whatever reason, that is safe, even though out of the minds of babes might come a scary image or something that reflects trauma, something that you didn't realize was in their head, but when it's art, it's okay. They're expressing themselves. Here we have all these technologies and these opportunities, and young entrepreneurs, by the way, which is not taught in school as well as it should be, in my opinion. We are taught to achieve middle management. We are taught to be employees. We are taught that the dream jobs are those that are under corporate management. Entrepreneurs, which I didn't know I was until I knew I was. Exactly what you're talking about. It's putting things together, taking them apart, putting them back together, and learning ways that others could do the same. Entrepreneurship is flourishing in the world of social or digital technologies because, by the way, this is why a lot of corporate medias and others are learning that their main competitor is their very people. The people who create the content are what people are consuming. And so why do I need the corporate entity to create the content? I'll just create the content. And that is way easier said than done. Many more people fail than succeed. You do need a backing and a budget and other equipment and elements. So young entrepreneurs learn that. No different than a young artist who takes out crayons for the first time, draws a picture, realizes through validation, love, that they're good at it. Then they paint another. Then maybe they have a farmer's market trade show table, and then maybe online using their Instagram with the help of an adult, an overseer, an executive producer, someone who funds them the canvases and the crayons, but also overlooks and oversees their brand marketing strategy, can create opportunities. And so we are watching parents, never mind the kids part, parents who accept the value of the talent, skills, and we don't just have to talk art, by the way. I'm watching glass blowing and welding videos. I'm seeing young grade 10 students make woodwork or shop candlesticks, but they're really good at it. And they were always really good at it. But now it can be documented and made into a TikTok channel, and it can be monetized. And again, we don't have to have this separation of, we're letting kids on the internet. No. There are parents here that could be amazing executive producers, financial analysts, people who are watching the data, realizing that the target demographic of that video that was just created was actually in Germany. Now we have a new strategy that a child would never think of. They're just excited to make woodworking or art or video. But the parent or the analytical uncle looks in and goes, this is really big in Germany right now. Let's shift our focus to that. Or maybe not Germany, maybe it's Saskatchewan. Maybe it's Vancouver. Maybe an audience or a data analysis will allow you to see that there's some financial opportunities somewhere else. That's entrepreneurship. Recognizing and realizing. But kids don't think that way. They're just making the thing. So what you're talking about ultimately is supporting our kids in what they do. It's so hilarious that we somehow focus in on that, but we've done that forever. When our child says, I want to play soccer, we get them a pair of cleats. We enter them on a team, and we see if they're good at it. They can try out for the A or the B or the C team. And then if they make it, we realize maybe they need more, or maybe it's a soccer camp, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. So we've always done this. We've always done this. We're just so scared to do it with digital technologies. But it's the exact same thing. When your kid wants to play hockey, buy him skates. When your kid wants to be a YouTube producer, get them a ring light for Christmas. Allow them to be a performer and coach them, direct them, produce them. Heck, edit it. Show them what you're doing. Make an entrepreneurship together. It's amazing.
Part of it.
It's amazing. Be a part of what your children love, and you'll find that your children will give back to you the honesty you're hoping, and they will allow you to be a part of the channel.
Well, excellent. What a great way to wrap this one up. You're on Joe Social Media.
Yeah, so Joe Social Media is on all the platforms. You'll find it or already have. I'm Joe Whitbread, Whitbread, which you've seen on your screen. So Joe Whitbread, I'm on all the platforms. I'm also a safe place for kids, and I really want to recognize that. I don't need more followers and likes, but I do want kids that don't have an outlet to know that there's a someone who can talk to them about technologies. A lot of families aren't techie. And so I also tell kids everywhere I go I'm a safe place. And then I pass along anything that's potentially alarming to proper authorities appropriately. So I am a safe place and work with the RCMP and various agencies to help kids through what parents aren't willing to talk to them about.
That's really important. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. Join us for the next episode with Joe.